Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and I want to welcome you to Is Your Script Missing This? Now, by the way, let me say up front, this is a question that anyone who wants to be a pro needs to be asking constantly, right? This isn't an indication that something's wrong. This is an indication that your script is going to end up being so good that people are going to want to work with you from now on. A-list screenwriters are constantly asking questions like this. They are constantly looking for more understanding. They're constantly looking for ways to elevate their writing. And I believe if you and I are going to be successful, we got to do the same thing. So let me walk you through what we're going to do today. We're going to be covering, first, what is missing from the rewrite process? And here's the thing I'd like you to do. As we are going through this class, I'd like you to be constantly looking for, what might help improve your writing? What might be the thing that has been missing, but as soon as you discover that, it changes everything for you, right? What could you add to your rewrite process that would dramatically improve the quality of your writing? Second thing, we're going to talk about writing in passes. And my experience has been about 20% of writers write in passes. And those are the ones who are doing really well. It's an advanced strategy. If this isn't a strategy you're already using, when we get to it, please make sure that you get it and that you use it from now on. It will dramatically increase the quality, ultimately, of your script. It won't feel the same, right? That thing where you write chronologically from start to finish feels really good, but this will make a big difference. Then we'll talk about some of the key components that you want to make sure are part of your rewrite process. And finally, we'll go into the 10-week professional rewrite class for those of you who really do want to be able to rewrite at a professional level. So here we go. Let me ask you this question. And this is one that at one point I sent out a survey and I basically asked this: is this your rewrite process? So let me walk you through what that survey basically said. And by the way, this was a rewrite process that I had learned when I first started screenwriting. I went to a class and this lady taught this rewrite process. So here was the rewrite process that she taught. It started with, you began at the beginning of page 1, and you started by reading the scene. As you were reading, you looked at the dialogue to see, was there anything you could improve in the dialogue? You looked at the description to see if there was anything you could improve in the description or anything you could delete to make it better. Then you focused on the words. How could you improve those words? How could you come up with better verbs and better nouns and those kinds of things, right? You started at the beginning of page 1 and you advanced all the way through till you got to the end of the final page. Now, when I ask this question, I sent it out to a group of writers who were not part of our alumni, and I just asked, and 99 out of 104 said this was their rewrite process. They began at page 1. They went through, they made changes all the way through. As they got to the very end, every single scene they had looked at and worked with the description, the dialogue, and the words. Okay. And up until that point, pretty much that was my rewrite process, or up until the point at which I discovered what was next. The problem with this one is this: it's essentially wordsmithing. Really what they're focusing on is the words, right? They're changing some dialogue, that's the words. They're changing the description, making it more, stronger, better, whatever. That's words. And then they are working specifically with words to make sure they've got the best nouns and verbs and all that. Problem with early wordsmithing is it locks the script. If you're on your final draft and you're doing wordsmithing, perfect. That is when you want to lock the script, right? But if you're on draft 2 and you're doing this, you got to ask yourself, what about the things that are under the surface, right? And so let's just talk about what this is. Here's the thing that happens. Let's say you're on draft 2 and you've got scenes that still need work, or let's say your structure still needs work, right? Or something like that. If you build in the perfect words, that causes your creative mind to feel like the thing is done. And that shuts creativity off. I know, how I know? First, I've done it. I've experienced it myself with my own writing. Second, you wouldn't believe how many times when I was producing, when I would ask a writer to make a change in a scene, they would actually argue to keep the words the way they were. And when it first happened, I thought, wow, that's weird. I even at one point went, okay, if it's so important to you, do it with those words. We just need to change this one thing. But after it happened over and over, I went, oh, wait a minute. They feel like those are the perfect words, and they feel like this script is done, even though it had structure problems or character problems or scene problems, right? So what I'm trying to help you with is this. What if you could make radical improvements in the quality of your writing simply by holding off on this step until you got to the right place in the process? So take a look at this. And you'll notice what we just talked about. That's levels 5 and 6, right? It's the dialogue and the words, including the description. So it's right here at the top. Here's the problem with that rewrite process. It completely leaves out levels 1 through 4, level 7, and level 8. They're not in that rewrite process. And this is something that early on pretty much kind of changed my life. I went, wait a minute, there's other things that need to be considered. We got this one script into a bunch of major production companies, and they didn't talk to us about the words or the dialogue. They came back and said there were some things missing in the structure. There was some problems with the character, right? There were other things that were missing, and almost all of them were beneath the surface. So we realized there's a surface level pretty much right about here. And most of that rewrite happened above that surface. So let me just walk you through this real fast. And again, keep looking for what's missing from your rewrite process, because that'll be the stuff that will make a big difference for you, or make the biggest difference for you. So at the very bottom, we have story. Story begins at the beginning of page 1, and it ends all the way at the end of the final page, right? So your story is present the entire time, right? This is the concept of your story, right? It's the big concept, it's the structure, it's the plot, it's the theme, that shows up in story. And if something's not working in your story, it doesn't matter what your words look like, right? Nobody's going to say yes to it. If you've got a problem down here, they're just going to tell you you have a problem down here and it needs a rewrite, or they're just going to pass and not tell you anything. So that becomes very, very important. Above that is characters. And most people spend a lot of time on their characters, which is a really good thing. But at the same time, sometimes you want to look at your story and see, are these the best characters for that story? Uh, could they be better characters? Could they be more interesting, more compelling characters? Could they be the right character for the story? And by the way, are those characters coming across on a superficial level, or are they coming across with a lot of depth? Above that, then is the situation. And I would say this, for a lot of writers, is an untapped opportunity. Now, let me tell you what I mean. Let's say you have a scene and we've got two people sitting in a diner and they're sitting there talking. And you'll see a lot of these kinds of scenes. They're called talking head scenes. You have two characters doing something meaningless and they're talking. They're walking, they're driving, they're playing pool, they're sitting on the beach, and all they're doing is talking. It's a talking heads scene. What's the situation in those? Now let's pause for a second because I want you to know this. It's like, let's go to the two people sitting in the diner. You saw the opening to Quentin Tarantino's movie. We've got two people sitting in a diner and they're talking. Then it turns out the situation is something unexpected. They're about to rob the place. And they're kind of working their way up to that robbery. And also, it's they're in a relationship, and a lot of this is their thing. This is who they are as a couple, kind of thing. Okay, so that had a deeper situation. We've also had two people sitting in a diner talking, and one of them is trying to get the other to leave, and we're wondering why. And he gets him out the door. We are 100 feet away and the place blows up. That happened in Good Morning Vietnam. And it's like, okay, we started with a talking head scene, and then it turned out something else was going on. And if you look at it, the entire time something else was going on. This place was about to blow up, and the little Vietnamese kid was trying to save his friend. And it's like, all right, so there's a bigger situation. I'd look at every talking head scene you have and I'd challenge it. I'd ask this question: what is the challenging situation? Or what is the covert situation? Or what is the situation that's going to surprise us at the end? Or what is the situation that changes the meaning of everything that's being said, right? There's lots and lots of ways to apply this layer that makes a really big difference. Number 4 is action. And there's a couple of different kinds of action. Let's go from the least to the best. At the lowest level, you have what actors call busy work. You've got two people sitting there sipping their coffee, right? Or eating, cutting up their steak, or, eating ice cream or whatever. And it's busy work. They're not doing anything. Or you have them playing pool. It's the same thing. It's still busy work. We don't know what's going on in this game. They're just moving around the table and talking. Then the next level up is what I would call visual action, which is action that is designed to cause an audience to be visually entertained. You see that in a lot of action movies, right? Where we've got this scene and they're nonstop. There's a chase that goes on. We get to go through all kinds of different obstacles, barely surviving, all of that kind of thing. That action is engaging to watch. Then you have what I'd call meaningful action. And this means your character, or one of the characters, is taking an action that delivers the meaning of the scene, right? So, like, for instance, let's say somebody said, "I don't like you," or something like that. They could say that, or if the meaning of the scene was this character really doesn't like this other one, they could also punch them. They could kick them. They could throw them off the roof. There's all kinds of physical actions they could do that would deliver that meaning powerfully, right? So you look to the action and you say, well, how can I do this? Now, let me tell you the value of all four of these underneath the surface is if you can put the meaning beneath the surface, then your dialogue is free for you to be able to deliver and have those characters say things that are unique to their character. You don't have to worry about trying to cram in the physics because we just saw the physics, right? If you have, let's say before you had a scene where one character explains to the other, don't put this together with this or the two will blow up, right? And they're explaining the physics and all the details of it and everything else. You don't have to do that. You could have one of them putting the two together and the other guy going, no, don't do it. And next thing you know, it blows up. And now we know the physics. Now we don't have to worry about it. Now, from that point on, anytime those two chemicals are even close to each other, the audience is going to be scared. They're going to be worrying. They're going to be wondering if it's going to happen again, right? So all of these work together to be able to make your dialogue much more interesting and impressive because it doesn't have to tell us this stuff. Now, a couple other places. Number 7. Oh, by the way, then you go dialogue, then you words. But here, I want you to know this. I put number 7 out here, interest, because it starts down here with the story. How do you get the audience's attention? How do you get the audience engaged? And it works its way all the way up to the words. What words are they saying? You know, what things can you build into the description that's going to make us more interested? But I would say where you want to focus is everything from level 4 down when it comes to interest. There are so many ways to create interest. We're going to talk about a few of them here in just a little bit so that you can see. Then finally, over here, number 8, subtext. And subtext is the meaning beneath the surface. At one point, we were producing, this was probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and a writer came to us and she had a script that had done well in contest. It was a semifinalist at that point, and she was positive it was going to win. I read her script. She had a great concept. It was interesting. It was compelling. I read the script. And it was like, wow, she had an amazing story from number 4 to number 6. But she had no subtext. She actually had, out of 54 scenes, she had 3 that even had a hint of subtext. She had no idea how to create subtext. She didn't know what really made that work. She told me she felt like her characters had lots of meaning. What was I talking about? So I rewrote one of her scenes and gave it back to her. And she goes, oh my God, that's exactly what I was trying to express. And what I'd done was I had built in the subtext, the part that was missing. Subtext basically means it's the meaning beneath the surface that the audience experiences in one way or another. Right? So it's not that thing of just hiding stuff or just being vague. It's about how do you set it up so the audience experiences it without the character saying it, right? So there's a little bit of art to it, but I promise you, there's also an entire, a process for how you design and write in subtext. It's one of the things we're fairly famous for. Let's go on. So take a look right now. Which of these steps are missing from your rewrite process? And I don't mean, I'm sure that you have story, you have characters, you have situation, you have action, you have all of these things to one degree or another. Which is missing when you're rewriting? Let me give you a moment to do that. Now let me ask a second version of this question. Which of these could you improve that would make a big difference in the quality of your script? Because that's the other thing, you know, when I talk with A-list screenwriters, they went through the process of making sure that they were great at every one of these. They did whatever it took to make sure that they understood this process, that they were able to do whatever it takes. Let me tell you something. With A-list screenwriters, every time I interviewed one, and I've interviewed probably over 100 over the last 8 years or so, every time I did that, I asked them about how they came up. What did it take them to get from their first script of something that didn't sell to being somebody who is consistently selling scripts, who is consistently being hired? And they talked about a lot of things. They talked about like writing a lot of scripts, you know, getting feedback, going through the same process as everybody else is. But the one thing that every one of them talked about was the process of how they learned how to do these things at a higher level than everyone else. How did they learn subtext? How did they learn to be able to create interest techniques? How did they learn situations? How did they learn structure? All of those kinds of things. And that is worth doing. So when you find something that's missing, rather than say, oh, there's something wrong with me as a writer, because there's not, just the question is, what tools do you still need to add to your toolbox? Right? That's all. And we've been through this with a lot of people. We have people in, you know, that are working with major producers right now. We have somebody who their script actually is set to go into production at Netflix, and things just got shut down. But that's okay. That's that situation. But I will tell you, I have watched those people grow and change as they have built more tools into their toolbox. So that's the job. That's always the job. All right. Back to, is your script missing this? And let's talk specifically now. The purpose, as you're doing any kind of rewrite, isn't just to elevate the quality of the read. It's also to increase the marketability. Please keep that in mind. So sometimes maybe all you'll be focusing on is the read. How do you make this read better? How do you make it flow better? Those kinds of things. That's important. But if your script hasn't sold yet, or if it isn't selling when you go out to market, then this becomes a question, right? The marketability. And I just wanted to put that up there so that you have that in your mind. You know, and what this becomes is, you know, what could I do to make this script more unique? And what could I do to have this pitch be more unique because of what's written in the script? So your strategy, before you get to edits, I want you to rewrite in passes, then go to the edits. So you should know before you do whatever draft you're doing, is this an edit where I'm just working with the words, right? And that would be, you're getting close to a final draft at that point. Or if it's not, what am I doing for my pass on this script, right? And I'll tell it to you this way. I worked with a major writer at one point. We put together a comedy that we ultimately got into Comedy Central and had a deal set up. It didn't end up getting produced, but you know, it was pretty close. But we were on draft 3, and rather than actually the way we actually did that, the first draft was we were just trying to see if we could get the story to work. The second draft, we were focused entirely on structure, and all we did was work with the structure. The third draft, now we were looking at how do these characters present themselves, and can we elevate the character in every scene, right? So we had a series of passes, and everyone, we were focused on one specific thing. We did 7 passes until we thought, okay, everything is working here. And then at that point, we did 2 passes that were wordsmithing passes, and then took it to Comedy Central. And by the way, they loved it. But you know, that writer knew what he was doing. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. He knew what he was doing. Every single draft had a purpose. And by the end of the purpose, we could tell if we fulfilled it. That's a pass. All right. And you might do it this way. Here's one version. You look at every scene and you ask, how can I build in more? How can I build in more character? How could I build in more subtext? How could I build in more interest, right? How could I build in more anticipation for what's coming up in the future? There's all kinds of things you could do that with, but you are specifically working with one technique, one tool. As you go through the entire script, you're trying to find where can I elevate it based on this particular tool. Then, every time you find something that's missing, I want you to celebrate. Don't look at something that's missing and go, oh no, I'm such a terrible writer, or those kinds of things. You know, when we're doing things, when we're putting together projects, we're always going to look for what's missing. And the moment we find what's missing, that means that the script is already better in the future. So it is a valuable thing to do. It's an important part of the process. I'm going to give you 4 improvements right now that are often overlooked, and then I'll add a safety tip. So here's the first one. 3 ways to make the journey stronger, right? You have a journey. It starts at the beginning of the script, right over here, and it ends all the way at the end of the script. And so here's the first thing. You need both internal and external journey, right? So you look at your lead character, you got a protagonist. My experience has been, like, if we talk about genre, if you look at a drama, they'll often have a very, very strong internal journey, right? We are going through this character's experiences. They are having this internal thing that's going on that is driving everything. When I look at the great dramas, they also have a strong external journey. But I'll tell you, when I am reading somebody's drama that they're still developing as a writer, if they're great at the internal journey, often the external journey is almost not present. It's almost invisible. The other thing is true, the opposite is true for, say, an action story or an action writer. They're going to have a very, very strong external journey, right? We're going to go through a whole series of obstacles, chases, fights, all kinds of things are happening. This, you know, how does this character make it from here to there, right? What's going to happen in the midst of that? And if they're not a real strong writer, what will be missing is the internal journey. So just know, whichever you're great at, spectacular. I want you to feel good about that, right? Accept it, be okay with it, all of that. Whichever you're weakest at, I want you to feel the same way, except I want you to add curiosity to that. Just add some curiosity and just go, okay, I'm really great at this external journey, but my characters don't have much of an internal journey. Let me start looking. What could it be, right? What would that be? This character is going to go through 5 different fights and 3 chase scenes, right? We know what changes on the external. They make it out of the country. They survive. They don't get killed, whatever it is, right? What changes in the internal? Do they grow up in the midst of that? Do they go from being somebody who can't have a relationship to somebody who can? Do they fall in love in the midst of that, right? Do they discover that they were the cause of their own problems? what's that internal change that happens while we're on this external journey? And the same the other way around. So if you look at your story right now, and one of these is really strong, but the other one isn't, you know exactly one of the places to go. Second thing here, we're talking about making the internal or the journey stronger. Challenge this character to the core, right? As in, look and see, where did you make it easy for this character to go through this journey? Let's say you have somebody who is a war hero, and let's say they're not a war hero that inside feels like they really weren't a hero or whatever. Maybe they were afraid, all that kind of thing. But let's say we have somebody who's not that. They're some kind of Navy SEAL person. They have no fear whatsoever going into situations. Let's pretend. Okay, so if you put them in a gun battle and they, go through 5 or 10 people that they kill, that doesn't challenge them. If they've already been through that 100 times, that's just business as usual kind of thing. So the other side is what if they had become religious after that and they believed their own Bible, and like when it said things like thou shall not kill, suddenly that was their new rule. And now they have to go through that same situation, but they somehow have to follow that thing that they now believe, right? Maybe that would challenge them. Or if you had a character, let's say they came back and from the war and they had all kinds of, they had a major wound, all of their friends had died, and now they were like, they weren't just horrified by war, they were also traumatized by it in a big way, and they felt that they were the cause and they were the problem. Now you put them back in that same situation and everything inside them is going against what they've always done. So that might be challenging, right? So look at your, especially your lead character, your protagonist, and ask, how can I challenge this character to their core? How can I make it worse? Let me just tell you one story on this. I was at Disney at one point, and we were interviewing some writers, and this writer came in, sat down. I'd never met him, and so I asked him about how he broke in, and he said he had written this script, and it had a pretty good pitch, so he got it into a major producer. He went into the meeting, and the producer sat there and said, "You really like your characters, don't you?" And the writer said, "I think I have great characters." He says, "I know, but you like them." And he said the producer said that like 2 or 3 times. And then finally he said, "What's wrong with that?" And he says, these characters just seem like they sit there on the page. Nothing really is happening with them beyond, the action that's around them. So he said he went home, and he got home and he started drinking. He was upset. And as the more he drank, the more angry he got with his characters. And at some point along the way, he did a rewrite. That night, he said he stayed up for like 12 hours after that. He did a rewrite where he just tortured those characters, where he made their lives absolute hell. And he said he was just angry at them. They were the reason he hadn't made the deal. And woke up the next morning, and it turned out that ended up being the script for 10 Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And that started his career. He challenged those characters. He stopped being nice to them and did something different. He said from that point on, his job is to put his characters in hell. Just a thought. Force your character further outside their box with each act. This is really important. Let me tell you the worst pitch a person can do. And that's to start out with something that's a major hook that's in your first act. And then when the producer says, "And then what happens?" And this was one that happened with me. And then what happens? The writer says, well, then it plays out, right? What that means is the writer took the character outside their box a little bit, and then they went, instead of going up, instead of it getting stronger, instead of getting further outside their box, it then levels off and plateaus. Don't do that. You should be able to look at every act and see that you have made life more difficult for those characters. You have taken them further outside their box. You have caused us to worry about them more because they don't know what they're doing anymore, right? They don't know how to deal with this situation, but they're doing everything they can. You do that, and again, the audience experiences it, and they worry for those characters. So this predicts or creates unpredictability. It causes your audience to wonder and to worry. Make sure you make use of that. Number 2, build subtext into every scene. And let's talk about how you do this. First, know that there's a surface meaning and a deeper meaning. And if you have your characters doing the thing they say they're there to do and talking about it, that's all on the surface. If they're talking about what's right in front of us and they're doing what's right in front of us, that's the surface. Now then, the question is there something under that surface? And there might be. You might have characters doing the thing they say they're doing, talking about it, and under the surface, we know that behind that wall is somebody that's going to blow them up. And it's like, okay, all right, so now we're feeling the tension and we're worried about them. And the closer they come to that wall, the more fear we have, because there's something under the surface, right? But other than that, if you don't have that kind of situation, then you need to know there's a surface meaning and there's a deeper meaning, and ask yourself, what is the surface meaning? And then what's the meaning that's beneath that? So, and then you build in that subtext, and you can build one layer of subtext, one level of subtext, right? The character is saying one thing and they mean something else. You could build in another layer, and that might show up with, like, let's say you have a character who's sitting at a bar drinking, and they tell the person next to them that they're having some kind of problem in life, and now they're discussing it, and now we're discovering what their problem is that's beneath the surface. Oh, they're going to be going to court tomorrow and all this other kind of stuff. And we show up for court the next day and find out they were talking to the judge, right? And it's like, okay, now we rethought that scene just before. How much information did they give to the judge? Or they were talking to the prosecutor. How much information did they give to the prosecutor in that case? And it's like all of that information now is going to be used against them. Did they just confess in the midst of that? We're having to rethink that, right? So you could build in multiple levels beneath a surface. And that's just something we can talk about another time. So, actually, let's talk about it now. Here's one: character subtext. The character has a secret or a wound, or they're doing something covert. Maybe they're deceitful, they're withholding, or they're afraid, right? There's lots of ways to build in character subtext. Here's the second: situational subtext. Maybe there's a misinterpretation, that the whole scene is built around one character misinterpreted what's happening with the others. Maybe we as the audience are experiencing superior position. We know who is behind that wall. We know what is happening, like the whole behind the wall, there's a bomb, that's superior position. If we know it in advance, the characters don't, we're experiencing it. Maybe the situation is all about deception. This whole scene is two characters are going to deceive another. Or maybe it's about sabotage. We're watching one character sabotage someone else but they're not talking about that. And then there's action subtext. And this means the action is different than or opposite of the dialogue. Character says one thing, does another. So again, you can build at least one form of subtext into every single scene of your script. I would say you should have, the audience should pretty much always have a deeper experience of something that's beneath the surface. The more you can do that, the better your script and the more professional you are as a writer. Number 3, make every scene more interesting. And this is actually a pretty easy thing to do if you just focus on the right stuff. So I totally believe this. Great scenes are built through interest techniques. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, then maybe that's an area that you could start to focus on now, because it'll take you to a new level. Here's some of those techniques. If you have a scene that's built around surprise, it sets us up in the beginning so that we are going in one direction, and then suddenly it pulls the rug out from underneath us at the end of the scene. If you have a scene that's built around suspense, this is the opposite of surprise in many ways. In the beginning, we know that something bad is going to happen, like seeing that bomb behind the wall. We're worried. The closer this character gets to that bomb, the worse it is for us. We're in total suspense. A scene that's built around a twist. And again, the surprise was a twist, yes, but you might have a twist early in the scene. You might have a twist at the middle of the scene that changes everything, that has us find out this character is somebody I thought they weren't, right? Has us all of a sudden discover something, or just twist off in a completely different direction. We think they're winning, and now by the end of the scene, they're losing. Or the other way, we think they're losing, and suddenly something happens, and now they're winning. Intrigue is a great technique to use also. This means you've got something going on under the surface that is usually dastardly. Something bad, something evil is happening, and we're having to search for it as an audience. We're wondering, wait a minute, is she really the one? Which one of these people killed that person? Right? There's some kind of plan under the surface, right? Every spy movie is built on intrigue, but I'll tell you, there are also, intrigue could be built into a rom-com, it could be built into a drama, it could be built into any of those. Mystery, of course. This means you set up something where we know, like let's say there are 4 parts to it. There's who did it, when did it get done, why did it get done, right? And how did it get done? Maybe you give us 2 of those, and the other 2 we have to wonder about. Especially if you look at most of the whodunit movies, usually somebody dies in one of the first couple of scenes, and now we're in the train with every person here could be a killer. Anybody here could have done it. Who did it, right? So we know that they died. We know how they died. We know where they died. What we don't know is who did it. And we may or may not know why. So all you got to do is leave out one of those. But the big thing having to do with mysteries, it's important that you actually give us enough so that we engage in the mystery. So sometimes I'll read something and they'll basically imply that something happened, but I don't know what it is. I don't know why it happened. I don't know who did it. I don't know how it happened. We don't know anything, right? The writer thought being vague created a mystery. It doesn't. A mystery is as much about what you tell us as what you don't tell us. So, number 4, make big picture improvements, right? That make your script more pitchable. And these make a big difference. I'll talk about that in a second. But we're talking about First, identify the big hook of the story. What is the thing that's going to sell your script, right? Make sure that that's there. Second, what makes this story unique and significant, or in a significant way? Because if it's not, if what you have is a story that's like 10 other movies that are out there, and there's nothing big, nothing that we haven't seen in it, then that may be the next pass that you do for your rewrite. And then if you're talking about putting together a pitch, make a list of the most interesting things before you write that pitch. And this is also could be part of a rewrite too. If when you go to make your list, those things aren't something that if you said them to someone else, they'd go, oh my God, I've got to see that. Like I've talked to a lot of people and I'll say, well, what's most interesting about your script? And they'll go, my characters. And it's like, if we just pause right there, every writer on the planet could say that line, right? I have no idea what's interesting about them. So then I'll say, what's interesting about your characters? And then they'll say, well, I really like them because, and then I'll go, okay, great. And what's interesting about that? And let's keep going until we find something that has that character stand out in a way that they are so interesting that it becomes part of your pitch, right? Now, having said all of that, let me just say, if you don't find any of these, or if when you say the most interesting things, people are like, okay, well, that's nice, then you need to elevate it, right? Then you need to take it to a higher level. Then you need to make it more interesting, make it more unique. And I had a guy at one point who said, Hal, there is no more unique. It's either unique or it's not unique. And it's like, well, maybe in his world, but in my world, I'll tell you, there are some things that are just a little bit unique. They're, oh, okay, that's an interesting improvement on what we've seen before. And there are some things that are out of the box unique. You need to figure out, what will actually be the unique thing that'll be amazing and maybe become the big hook of your story. So every one of these makes a difference. Let me give you one safety tip here. Again, it's so easy to focus mostly on the wordsmithing. And let me tell you, I use wordsmithing in two ways. The first one is when you get to draft 7 or 8 or whatever it is, and you've got something that everything works on under the surface, everything is there exactly the way you want it. Then at draft 7 or 8, then I focus entirely on wordsmithing. Every bit of it needs to be great, right? But if I'm on draft 1 or draft 2, and I suddenly find myself wordsmithing, that means something happened in my creative process because I have stepped out of the creative process from draft 1 or 2, right? Draft 1, probably my whole purpose is just to get the story working. If all of a sudden I'm wordsmithing, well, there's 2 problems with that. The first one is even a single thought, a single idea could cause everything I just wordsmithed to go out the door. I may change that opening scene 5 times. Why am I wordsmithing it on the first draft? That's just crazy. But the second thing is, usually what that means is I have popped over to this process that I'm more comfortable with than being in confusion about what I do with that scene, right? So if you find yourself, anytime I find myself wordsmithing, first thing I ask is this, did I intentionally mean to wordsmith? Is this my time to wordsmith? Or did I just get confused? Did something just happen in the process I was going through? And sometimes people will say, well, I never have that problem. But just to be clear, if you've ever found yourself, like, let's say you meant to be writing and you suddenly found yourself on Facebook, and now you're scrolling through Facebook, looking at stuff that doesn't matter to you, right? It's like, wait a minute, you were writing, you meant to be writing. Why are you on Facebook? Because I know how it is. I've talked with hundreds and hundreds of writers who have had this problem. It's the same thing if you're wordsmithing and you don't mean to be. If you're wordsmithing a first draft, well, that's kind of crazy anyway, because you're going to end up, changing 100 things there that you need to be looking under the surface. So here's what my advice would be: just don't do it. Just don't wordsmith until everything works. Once you have everything working, then wordsmithing is absolutely the right process. Now, let's go over here. I told you I was going to give you one more thing that was missing from a lot of writers' work. And this is, it may or may not be missing from yours. But what I notice over time, having worked with, I've taken about, 1,500 writers to market at different times. And what I've noticed is a lot of them, like probably 90 to 95%, were missing this one thing before they did their rewrite. So take a look. First, take a look and just look and see, do you have any idea what that thing is? What's missing from this process? Right? Take a moment and see. And then second, what I'd like you to do again is just look and see which of these do you need to pay more attention to. You need to add to your rewrite process. And now that we've said that, let me just walk you through what this next thing is. Here's the thing that's missing: the pitch. If you're doing a rewrite, like let's say your script is on the third draft right now, and that's what happened to me. I was working with that pro writer at one point. This is about 15 years ago. And we were on draft 3, and he said, why don't we pause and create our pitch? And I was like, why don't we do draft 4? And he goes, we'll do draft 4. But he says, I need a pitch. And I said, why do you need a pitch? And he says, so I know what to do on draft 4. And I was like, well, I don't know what that means, but fine. So we created a pitch. And we actually did it back and forth a couple of times. I pitched him, he pitched me, until we got the pitch where we really liked the pitch. And then we went back to draft 4 and made our plan for how we were going to do a rewrite on draft 4. It was night and day from how I normally did it. In between draft 3 and draft 4, we improved that script 100%. And from that point on, every change that we made fit that pitch. Now, let me pause and tell you this other thing. When my wife and I were producing, we read, I don't know how many, we probably read at least a couple of thousand scripts. And we would only read a script when somebody gave us a pitch we thought would work. Out of all the scripts that we read, I would say somewhere between 50 to 60% of them did not deliver on the pitch the writer gave us. Sometimes they were half about the pitch and half about something else. Sometimes only the first act was the pitch, and then we went into a second act that was about something completely different. There were some times where they would start in one genre and end in another, right? But what we found was that the pitch somehow didn't get honored in the midst of their writing process. So when I talked with A-list screenwriters, what they told me was the pitch is the first thing they do. They create a pitch before they write. Now, if you think about that for a moment, I know they're in the business. I know that they're used to pitching and all of that kind of thing, but that's where they start. I interviewed one guy who he had written 9 scripts, and out of the 9, 8 had been produced. They'd been made into movies. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I've run into anybody who has that kind of track record. I said, so what's your key? What is it that made that work for you? And he said, oh, he says, I create the pitch first. And if I believe the pitch will sell, then I write the script. And it's like, okay, good safety tip. Up until that point, I hadn't really thought of the pitch as part of the rewrite process, but he's right. So stay with me here for about 5 minutes. Let me just walk you through this class that's coming up that actually honors this. And I'll tell you up front, this program, we have had winners at Nickel, if you know the Nickel Fellowship, the most prestigious screenwriting contest in the world. We've had winners at Nickel. We had one 2 years ago. We've had winners at Austin Film Festival. We've had winners at Page, and we had a grand prize winner there. We've had grand prize and first place winners at Final Draft Big Break contest. And we've had over 100 scripts optioned that went through this particular program. So if you're looking to be able to have success in this industry, mastering the rewrite process may be the thing that makes the difference. So let me just walk you through this. And as I'm walking you through this, you'll see some of the steps that you can use as you do your own rewrite. And then at the end, I'll give you a special that could make a big difference for you. So here we go. First thing, a couple of days after you sign up, we will send you a pre-lesson on going from script to outline. Now, this may sound backwards, but here's what we found. If you want to make big sweeping changes and improvements in your script, it's easier to do it in a 5 to 10 page outline than it is in a 100-page script, right? So, and there's certain ways to do that outline that will make it so much easier for you to make high quality improvements beneath the surface. Once you've done that, when you get into the class, first thing is you're going to get clarity on your pitch. What I told you just a few moments ago, that makes a huge difference, because if you know your pitch, then you're going to rewrite to deliver powerfully on that pitch. Then we're going to build genre conventions into your outline. So you may have written this script originally thinking it was one genre, and now you look at it and go, wow, it would be much easier to sell as another genre. The other possibility is you may have written your script not even thinking about genre, not worried about it, just writing the story. So you will build the genre conventions into the outline to make sure that when a producer reads it, they experience them so they know how to sell it and how to market it. Third, then you're going to elevate the structure to make it fantastic. And again, depending upon where you are, some people are great at structure, some people are okay at structure. If your structure isn't really powerful, if it doesn't do everything it takes to make sure an audience has a certain experience, this will make a change. Fourth, then we're going to solve the major problems in the outline. So we've had people before, when we get to this part, they suddenly go, oh my God, I just figured out what will make my script work. So it's worth doing. But a lot of times you don't see problems when you're going through reading scene after scene after scene after scene. You don't see the problems as clearly as you can in the outline. So we're going to solve those big problems right there. Then you're going to elevate the beats of the story in the outline to make sure that every single scene does what it needs to do and it's as interesting as possible. At that point, we'll go to character profiles, right? And this is about really finding out and discovering the things about your characters that make them amazing for this story, right? So you will actually build them into simple character profiles that you can then write from. Then you'll go through the outline and you'll look at each character's individual story and see, did you deliver on that character in their story? Number 8, and this is really important, you will then look at those main characters and look to see, are they introduced powerfully? And I mean by that, are they introduced in a way that would cause an actor to want to sign on? And if they are, great. If they're not, we'll give you exactly what you need to be able to elevate them. Once we've done all of that, you're going to match the outline to the script. And here's what this means. Let's say we've made a whole bunch of changes in the outline. You will now go back and you will look at the script and you will note, here are the scenes I actually need to change. Because a lot of times you don't have to rewrite the whole thing, right? Like when M. Night Shyamalan discovered that Malcolm, the psychiatrist, was actually one of the dead people, he didn't rewrite every scene. He actually wrote 2 new scenes and made minor rewrites in about 8 of the scenes. So most people would say that kind of situation would be a page 1 rewrite. It's like, no, it's not. It's just a very selective, very direct rewrite that will make things work. So that's what we're about. Now we're going to go to the script. So at this point, you're going to look at every single scene and you're going to rate the entertainment value of it. This is something that I've never seen anyplace else. It was a stroke of brilliance from one of the people that we were working with as we designed this program. She said, well, what if we rated the entertainment value? So we took a scene or a script as a group and we went through and everybody read all the way through it. And we found there were about 15 out of 60 scenes that had low entertainment values, but they made sense. They were logical. They had exposition, stuff like that. That meant all you had to do to go back and improve the script was just find those scenes and find a way to make them more entertaining. So you'll do that. Number 11, now we're going to add meaningful action. And this is very powerful. It makes you more of a pro writer. Let's say you have 20 talking head scenes in your script and you bring that down to 10. You might have doubled the quality of that script just by doing that. Number 12, now you're going to look at scene structures that double the drama. And a lot of people don't even think about this kind of thing. If you look at, they just write in whatever scene structure came to them at the beginning because they weren't aware of it. But by the time you do this particular lesson, you will look at a scene and you'll go, oh, I see. That one was written through this scene structure. It would be twice as powerful if it was written through a different scene structure. So that will give you control of that in your writing. Then it's about, how do you make sure all your lead characters have unique voices? And by the way, to be clear, this doesn't mean that they say ahs and ums. It doesn't mean they stutter. It doesn't mean they have an accent. It means they speak through who they are as a character, and each one of them is unique. This is incredibly important if you're trying to get actors. Then it's about memorable lines. And let me tell you what memorable lines does. A memorable line, for instance, is one of those lines that people say all the time. Make them an offer they can't refuse, right? Or you had me at hello. Or, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. Or carpe diem, seize the day, right? All of those came from movies, but they weren't just the lines. It was about how you set those lines up. So here you're going to find exactly the process for designing lines that people will say are incredible and they'll want to say to their friends. And then the process for writing the scenes to set them up powerfully. 15, then it's about endings. 16, it's about openings. Your opening scene sells you as a writer. A lot of people don't know this. When a producer opens your script, whether it's on their computer or if they're looking at a live physical script, when they open to your opening scene, if they don't know you, they're reading that scene to decide if you're a pro. So That opening scene, in my opinion, needs to be the best writing you've ever done in your lifetime, right? That sells you. And I can give you so many examples of this. But if you look at like Shakespeare in Love, the opening scene, where Henslowe is behind the curtain, we're hearing him howl. We now cut back behind the curtain and we see that they've got him tied to a chair. His feet are over the fire. They're torturing him while the finance guy is negotiating to try to get his money. And Henslowe does it in a comedic way. He ends up making a deal with the guy to be a partner and all of that kind of thing. But that opening scene, if you look at it, the moment I read that scene, I went, oh my God, this writer's incredible, right? And I can think of about 30 other scenes that were just like that. So that's what this particular lesson is about. And then finally, it's about how do you write your description in a way that delivers both visually and emotionally. And this you do without violating the show, don't tell rule. So I really, truly believe this. We came up with a process here that actually you can make your writing so much more engaging for readers just by understanding these two things and not violating. Like, you don't want to be telling them, here's what the character feels, but you want us as an audience or as a reader to feel whatever that is. So that's what this process is about. Listen, this is a professional rewrite process that you can easily learn. It's a 10-week class. You're going to bring one script in, go through this entire process. By the time you're done, you will know it. It won't just improve the writing. This program does really 3 incredibly important things. It improves the words that are on the page, right? It improves the quality of your story and your characters and everything that goes in there. It gives it more depth, all of that kind of thing. But most important, it improves who you are as a writer. Rewriting is 80% of your success as a screenwriter. And if you don't have a full professional process, you are cutting yourself short. So let me give you a special on this, just because, right now is a time when I feel like writers really need to be able to up their game and take the opportunities that are going to come in about 2.5 to 3 months from now. So it's like, this is the perfect timing for what's happening in our world right this moment. Normally, the normal price is $350. This program starts on May 22nd. So that gives you a couple of weeks to work with your script. You're going to get that pre-lesson on script to outline. And on May 22nd, at that point, it'll be at the full price of $350. Today, for the first 20 people, here's the special that you'll get. You'll get in for $197. And that will save you $150. Now, you guys know how our system works. First 20 people get in for that price. Then it bumps up another 50, and the next 20 get in for that. And then it bumps up another 50 until we finally get to the first day of the class. But if you want to have a professional rewrite process that does all the things that you're seeing on that page right there, I promise you, you will love that you learned this. You won't just use it on this script. Once you've learned this process, you'll be able to go back and rewrite any script you've written so far, and you will use it on every script from this point on. This also is a process that you will use when you get a manager, that you will use with producers, right? We've designed this up front to work inside the industry. So if your goal is to be able to be in this industry, then this process will make a huge difference for you. All you got to do is either click that link or write it down, bit.ly/I am rewriting. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, go through the sign up process, and you've already taken a step towards becoming a significantly better writer. And again, every one of these lessons will elevate your ability to write. We put them all together and you will be an amazing writer. So this is absolutely worth doing. My hope is that you'll join us, because joining us means you will master this process and be able to use it to be able to do what it is you came here for, right? So with that, listen, I want to say thank you guys for being with me today. I hope we already made a difference for you. And I promise you, if you join us on this or any other class, it will make a significant difference for you. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best. Bye-bye, everyone.